Let's talk about how the Beanie Man is bringing down the American Republic. He's decided to just go full revolutionary on us, unfortunately.
Tim Pool's finally hit that nuclear button.
Yep, civil war is starting. But before we start, we shall be doing a plug for John Wheealey and Rory in the Office's video on architecture. Is modernity the end
Did
of
you just
architecture?
call him Rory from The Office?
Yes, I did. Rory from The Office. There you go. That's his new nickname. He's going to hate me for that. I was going to add to this, actually. It reminds me of an essay written by George Orwell called Thoughts on the Common Toad. And he posits that all beauty is taken away from architecture to strip man's soul of his sentiment of religiosity and focus it towards state worship. And so
I can absolutely agree with that. I think there's nothing more demoralising than walking around a city made up entirely of large grey bricks.
You've been to London then. We actually had on our university campus a prison architect design 2 of the buildings, and everyone just got lost.
They're literally getting prison architect, of course.
But speaking of beautiful buildings, have you been watching the January 6th Capitol Hill stuff recently?
No, I've been ignoring it for the most part.
So has pretty much everyone. Unfortunately, we've set Josh on the task of looking at the timeline and some of the photos from January 6th, so you can go over and look at the website for
this
a full
was
breakdown
Josh
of this.
and Hugo. I don't want to discount Hugo's contribution.
we won't
the two
cut out
of them
Hugo's
have both done some
contributions.
great work here.
Yes, and this is all perfectly well reported on the website, but we do have some updates. Unfortunately for January 6th, barely anyone has cared about the January 6th hearings because the Republican Research Department decided to look at Google Trends, and as you can see, Jill Biden is getting higher search results than the January 6th hearings the other day.
Oh, so the January 6th hearings is just the blue line,
Yes.
which has stayed pretty consistently down because no one cares.
Yes, but you wouldn't think many people care about Jill Biden, would you?
No, I wouldn't actually. That's an interesting point. Why is there such a sudden spike 2 days ago?
I would suggest it's because of the following clip.
Oh. Do you want to play that for us, Michael? Oh, wait.
Trump sent out
Nope.
the tweet.
Is this the wrong clip?
With-
That's the wrong clip. It's
Apologies,
the one on the tweet.
everybody.
It's all
Yeah,
right.
if you just want to play the clip
There
on
we
the
go.
tweet.
This community, as distinct as the Bogotas of the Bronx, as beautiful as the blossoms of Miami, and as unique as the breakfast tacos here in San Antonio, is your strength.
She clearly earned her
Diversity.
doctorate.
Yeah, just pause that. Imagine going up to, like, I don't know, Hell's Kitchen
Yeah.
in New York and just going, I love you guys as much as I love the pasta and the spaghetti. It's so pandering.
Yeah. I think Joe Biden's senility seems to be infectious at this point. Now, Jill actually gave this bizarre speech at a luncheon called the Latinx Inclusion, and inclusion is spelled with an X in it, luncheon.
Of course.
Because inclusion
Wait.
itself...
Oh my god, they put the X in inclusion as well.
You can
No
see there.
word will go unexed.
Well, the irony is then you're putting something exclusive in inclusion, but also the idea that the word inclusion is not inclusive enough is staggering. So this luncheon, she gave it at a panel titled A Powerful Case for Equity. Equity in education is the foundation for equity in every other sector, the panel description read. As the pandemic and the Uvalde massacre have underscored the need for culturally and linguistically competent health responses, the nation's leaders join us to chart the path forward for Latino children and families.
I think Uvalde is more for competent police responses, not health responses, but okay.
But it's also very strange that they're using the Uvalde massacre to push Hispanic racial politics, as if exactly
Who was
as
the
if
shooter?
as if the shooter's background was not Hispanic, and so there is something deeply insidious about this, as to where the Biden family seem to be happy to overlook the ethnicity of the shooter whilst also trying to make a racially political point off the backs of school shooting victims.
I would say, overlook is probably not the word for it. Downplay
Yes.
is probably what they're trying to do. The same as they do with any time anybody who isn't a white straight male does anything bad.
Yeah, all we have to do is look at the regular mass shooting statistics, and they're actually fairly well balanced in terms of gang shootings, but those aren't often considered in it because they don't make the same political point. But actually, at the January 6th committings, there were some decent clips, as we can move on to. Tim Pool decided to put out an op-ed in Newsweek because he believes he was misrepresented at the hearings.
Oh,
so
really?
if we go to the Newsweek article, we can play the clip at the top of it. It's pretty staggering.
Trump sent out the tweet with his explosive invitation. Trump repeated his big lie and claimed it was, quote, statistically impossible to have lost the 2020 election before calling for a big protest in D.C. on January 6th. Be there, will be wild. Trump supporters responded immediately. Other key Trump supporters, including far-right media personalities, began promoting the wild protest on January 6th.
And now Donald Trump is calling on his supporters to descend on Washington, D.C., January 6th. This could be Trump's last stand. And it's a time when he has specifically called on his supporters to arrive in D.C. That's something that may actually be the big push Trump supporters need to say, this is it. It's now or never. On that day, Trump says, show up for a protest, it's gonna be wild. And based on what we've already seen from the previous events, I think Trump is absolutely correct.
Well, that doesn't seem to say what the guy is implying that it says.
Absolutely not. He's just reading from a news article, which makes it quite disturbing that Tim Pool can be clipped, smeared in a congressional hearing without a right of reply, because of course there's no cross-examination, wasn't invited, and misrepresented in that way just for doing what we're doing, just reading news articles now.
Are we surprised at this point, especially given that they heavily implied that notorious centrist fence-sitter Tim Pool is a far-right commenter?
Well, even he says in this, he gets some ire from the Patriot.win, formerly the r/the Donald, for being a sort of centrist and unwilling to commit to election fraud narratives, which obviously being on YouTube we will not discuss today, please don't cancel us. But from Tim Pool's article, he says, in what way is reporting the news the equivalent to promoting it? Nowhere in the clip Rep. Raskin played, or even the 30-minute-long podcast, did I ever encourage anyone to go to DC, let alone to engage in any kind of violent protest. In their lead up to January 6th, I made the same point. Violence will solve nothing, and if January 6th is expected to be violent, people should not go, and I certainly wouldn't be going. My company initially intended to interview people in DC on January 6th, but after warnings of disruptions from our hotel, we decided to avoid DC on that day, just as I advised my followers. Not only that, but I barely qualify as a Trump supporter. Trump's most ardent fans give me a lot of grief for insisting on calling out his flaws. They use a variety of homophobic slurs to denigrate me. I did proudly vote for Trump in 2020, and I explained why I thought he was the better option given the choices. Still, playing my clip alongside Alex Jones and other ardent pro-Trump personalities is well over the top. So, he clearly wants to distance himself from the misrepresentation in the clip, but he has no qualms with actually having voted Trump, and neither should he. Trump, by all metrics, was a successful president. He had some great policies. We don't have to agree with him on everything, like deficit spending, for example, but given the state that the Democrats and Biden are running the country, I don't blame any former Democrat voter for having buyer's remorse, or for Tim Pool doubling down on the fact that he made the right decision.
All sounds pretty fair to me.
Unfortunately, there's a hole in Tim Pool's story, because there's actually video footage of him inciting a riot.
Oh no.
The horsemen took your land. They drove your people into the hills to scratch a living off rocks. Take back the lands they stole from you. Burn every village.
We have only to remove those who oppose us.
As you can see, Ian has many brothers and sisters.
I can't believe that Tim Pool would do such a thing.
No, it's why he keeps the beanie. He keeps all the long white hair. It's actually luscious.
I thought he was hiding his bald spot, but...
No, well, we're breaking all sorts of news on today's podcast. Speaking of the prophet, whose I was right jar overfloweth, Alex Jones was included alongside Tim Pool and two fellas named Salty Cracker and Matt Bracken. The idea that Salty Cracker was read out in a congressional hearing means that we really do live in Crown World. In the Democrats' digital perp walk, we can play this quick clip here.
Other key Trump supporters, including far-right media personalities, began promoting the wild protest on January 6th.
It's Saturday, December 19th. The year is 2020. And one of the most historic events in American history has just taken place. President Trump, in the early morning hours today, tweeted that he wants the American people to march on Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021.
And now Donald Trump is calling on his supporters to descend on Washington, D.C., January 6th.
He is now calling on we, the people, to take action and to show our numbers.
We're going to only be saved by millions of Americans moving to Washington, occupying the entire area, if necessary, storming right into the Capitol. You know, we know the rules of engagement. If you have enough people, you can push down any kind of fence or a wall.
This could be Trump's last stand. And it's a time when he has specifically called on his supporters to arrive in D.C. That's something that may actually be the big push Trump supporters need to say, this is it. It's now or never.
You better understand something, son. You better understand something. Red wave, bitch. Red wave. This is going to be a red wedding going down January 6th.
On that day, Trump says, show up for a protest. It's gonna be wild. And based on what we've already seen from the previous events, I think Trump is absolutely correct.
Motherfucker, you better look outside. You better look out January 6th. Kick that fucking door open. Look down the street. There's going to be 1 million plus geeked up armed Americans.
The time for games is over. The time for action is now. Where were you when history called? Where were you when you and your children's destiny and future was on the line?
No, I think it's incredibly unfair to conflate both.
In that
Jones
clip, you heard one of
and-
Trump's supporters predict a red wedding,
Much
which
more
is a
than that
pop
for is
culture
my-
reference
That's
to
my
mass
fault.
slaughter.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly unfair to conflate Jones and Tim Pool. Tim just reading an article, Jones not actually even saying specifically where in Washington to go, with Bracken, who actually said storm the Capitol, which don't do for future reference, is quite stupid, and Salty Cracker, can't believe I'm saying that, calling for a red wedding, obviously a reference to the Game of Thrones slaughter.
Yes, I was going to say that those two people I absolutely could see as, you could make the argument for inciting violence there.
Yes.
But Tim and Alex, in fact, I think there is some footage from January 6th that would kindly dismiss any idea that Alex Jones was trying to incite violence when he's literally standing there with a megaphone saying, "Don't riot, people."
It's almost like you
look.
could presage what I got up next.
Oh, looky here.
Well, we're going to play that just so we can have on the record that the Frogman did nothing wrong.
We don't want to have a Kent State here. So, I love you. We're saving the Republic. This is beautiful. But please tell everyone you know, march to the other side. March.
Start to make a path for us back there.
We're going to march. Trump is going to speak over here.
So it's actually very interesting he says march to the other side. Because in yesterday's congressional hearing, as we can see from the next tweet from Jack Posobiec, the Democrats actually admitted, with their little map there, that there was a rally planned all along at the other side of the Capitol, in front of the
very
Supreme Court
interesting.
building. And it was 2 hours after Trump's speech, so it gave people enough time to move all the way through the Capitol area to the Supreme Court, where they could peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard. So by the Democrats' own admission, Trump and his supporters did not plan on storming and occupying the Capitol, and perhaps a few fringe commentators said something very stupid, but to conflate everyone, including Tim Pool and Alex Jones, with that is entirely unfair, and it's just something the Democrats want to do to fit their narrative and hope to rake everyone over the coals because they're electorally floundering at the moment. So, even the Washington Post reporter, actually, in their visual timeline, if you can scroll down just a little bit, there we go. It actually says that the barricades were breached at about 1 p.m., but Trump was still speaking miles away at about 1:10 p.m. So even the Washington Post, very adversarial, owned by Jeff Bezos, etc., admits Trump did not order them to go to do it directly, and by the time that Trump was still speaking at his address on all the way the other side in front of the White House, the barricades at the Capitol were already being stormed by people in black masks, etc. But this obviously doesn't stop Democrats from making character attacks to fit their narrative. As we can see here, Alex Jones' bitter ex-wife, who lost the children in the custody battle, has volunteered to appear at the congressional hearings to testify against him, saying she has insider information that she believes is relevant to his prosecution.
Men, please be careful out there.
Yes, don't stick it in crazy. Just a bit of advice, personal advice as well. So, one person who won't be appearing at the hearings, unfortunately, is a gentleman by the name of Ray Epps, you may be familiar with. I believe you've covered this before, haven't you?
I am aware of the name Ray Epps, and I've also tangentially sort of remember some stuff. Remind me.
So, Ray Epps is a person who is at, according to the New York Times, the center of a far-right conspiracy theory which sees him as an FBI agent provocateur. He's ex-military. He's been reported on by Tucker Carlson and even asked about in the Senate as to where he was seen at January 6th inciting people to go into the Capitol by calling them directly, "We must go into the Capitol." But as of yesterday's congressional hearings, the New York Times have put out an interview with him, which is quite revelatory. So I'm going to quote from the article.
It's very interesting that certain people who have been photographed in the Capitol on January 6th have been arrested and jailed for a very, very long time on some very not flimsy charges.
Trumped up, you might say.
Yes, trumped up charges of trespassing, which, as far as I'm aware, you're not able to jail someone without any further charges for that for over a year and a half, but they have. And this Ray Epps, who is caught on video inciting violence, gets his own New York Times interview. That's very interesting, isn't it?
Oh, he's living entirely freely. He's actually got his dogs with him in the interview, which is very cute. So, from the article, Ray Epps has suffered enormously in the past 10 months as right-wing media figures and Republican politicians have baselessly described him as a covert government agent who helped to instigate the attack on the Capitol last year. I weep for you, sir. I am at the center of this thing, and it's the biggest farce I've ever seen, Epps said. It's just not right. The American people are being led down a path. I think it should be criminal. Interesting. To that end, Mr. Epps and his wife have been searching for a lawyer to help them file a defamation lawsuit against several of the people who have spread false information and accounts. Obviously, we at LotusEaters.com are just merely reporting the news which is in other outlets, and we do not take a stance on this. Please don't sue us.
I will say, this sounds an awful lot like he's had some lines fed to him.
Yes, it sounds like he's had legal advice.
And this sounds a lot like PR mentioning that he's got his dogs with him as well. Oh, he's got his dogs with him. Don't you understand? Bad people don't have cute dogs. Only good people have cute dogs. It's the same sort of PR that they bring out. Do you remember a few years ago there was one of those YouTubers who got called out for basically advertising gambling to kids, and he did it.
Was this Timon?
Yes, and
Yep.
he did the apology video where he brought his dog on for sympathy points.
For God's sake.
That's what this is. This is the T. Martin apology video, except regarding January 6th.
Yes, he's the T. Martin of insurrectionists. So, it's a sentence I never thought I'd say in my professional career. The truth needs to come out, Mr. X explained, petting his dogs. While Epps was a participant in some of the events that unfolded on January 6th, the claim that he inspired the Capitol riot in a false flag plot is solely based on the fact that he has never been arrested and therefore must be under the protection of the government. The interview transcripts show that Mr. Epps told agents that he had spent much of his time at the Capitol seeking to calm down other rioters, an assertion supported by multiple video clips. And then we cut a little bit later. One of the moments Mr. Epps said he regrets most from his stay in Washington took place right before the night before the Capitol attack, when he joined his son and a friend for a pro-Trump rally at Black Lives Matter Plaza. The fact that it's still named that is egregious.
I didn't even realise it was called that in the first place.
Oh yeah, it's had its name changed. Wonderful.
Pain.
During the event, he was videotaped by a right-wing provocateur, because it matters who's holding the camera, apparently, encouraging people to go inside the Capitol on January 6th in what he described, even at the time, as a form of peaceful protest. So I don't think they're going to be as charitable to other people, saying, we must go inside the Capitol, particularly when it says he's seeking to calm down rioters from other video clips, but right before the night before, he's saying they must occupy the Capitol directly, something that President Trump, that Alex Jones, that Tim Pool never said, but they're being smeared in a similar way.
And it can't have been a peaceful protest anyway. They didn't set anything on fire.
Exactly. They abided by the guide ropes, the monsters. The clip has also been used to depict Mr. Epps as a man who not only urged people to riot in the Capitol, but then also evaded prosecution. I think the fact that you haven't prosecuted him has done that. The Justice Department has not publicly addressed its decision not to charge him, but the legal definition of incitement requires a person's words to cause an immediate threat of danger, not one that could possibly occur the following day.
But Alex Jones saying, let's not riot, guys, let's just move over to the other side of the Capitol, now that is very threatening and very dangerous.
Well, I didn't realise the statute of limitations was less than 24 hours, so if you went out and said, kill X, and someone did it lunchtime the next day, apparently you're off the hook.
Brilliant.
That's
I'll make a note of that.
A staggering legal standard. So apparently Democrats no longer believe that telling people to occupy the Capitol is an incitement to violence, but Trump telling supporters peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard and to go home in peace and love is an incitement to violence. We are living genuinely in a 1984 Newspeak-style world here. Remember, a man identified Epps as seen in this video, was inciting people to go into the Capitol and was then booed by the crowd as a Fed. So people were very skeptical as to his motivations for telling them to occupy the Capitol at the time. So this doesn't just come from nowhere. This was the crowd on video at the time who were saying this. Again, we do not endorse the crowd statements, please don't sue us. The Washington Post also have this video which purports to show Epps involved in the barricade breach. This is the Washington Post, again, who have created the timeline of January 6th and are very, very on board with the January 6th hearings and calling it an insurrection. So this has not come from nowhere.
It says right there, Trump supporter Ray Epps breaching the Capitol grounds. I mean, it says it all, really.
We are just reading the facts, ladies and gentlemen.
We're just asking for some consistency here.
I'm just asking questions. When asked about how many FBI agents participated in January the 6th by Ted Cruz, or if any committed any violent crimes, and if Mr. Epps was involved in the FBI, it was an agent or an informant, Jill Sanborn, executive assistant at the FBI's National Security Branch, said, "Sir, I can't answer that," and that she could not discuss the specifics of sources and methods of the FBI. So we have a clip for this of Senator Ted Cruz grilling her, just so you can see for yourself.
Ms. Sandberg, I want to turn to the FBI. How many FBI agents or confidential informants actively participated in the events of January 6th?
Sir, I'm sure you can appreciate that I can't go into the specifics of sources and methods.
Did any FBI agents or confidential informants actively participate in the events of January 6th? Yes or no?
Sir, I can't answer that.
Did any FBI agents or confidential informants commit crimes of violence on January 6th?
I can't answer that, sir.
Did any FBI agents or FBI informants actively encourage and incite crimes of violence on January 6th?
Sir, I can't answer that.
So, for an investigation agency, you really don't know an awful lot, do you?
Well, I mean, I think we all know at this point that asking a federal employee a question that they respond with, I can't answer that, means yes.
Yeah. Are you implying the deep state isn't transparent, Harry?
Perhaps.
How could you? I wouldn't transgress the Clintons in that way. So, the committee's star witnesses are also starting to fold. We have, from a Daily Caller article, in an email sent to a former senior Trump official on February the 4th, Cassidy Hutchinson, the woman who said that Trump tried to choke out a Secret Service agent and grab the wheel like Heath Ledger's Joker pushing his driver out of the truck in The Dark Knight. Apparently, she said that she had trouble securing a legal team and asked the former senior Trump official for help in getting contact with his fundraising organizations or attorneys. So, when she was subpoenaed by January 6th, she contacted the Trump team directly, but didn't get a response. And the reason was Mark Meadows didn't want to involve himself and compromise the transparency of the process. So he didn't just leave her hanging out to dry. He actually said, essentially, I don't want to compromise the legitimacy of the judicial process by implicating myself in influencing your testimony with my financial aid. And so it seems she has some sort of motive for cooking up this seemingly bogus story about Trump trying to take the wheel, specifically when she said it was a car that wasn't even there on the day. She implied that it was a presidential beast and it was actually a vague SUV. She said, I was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee on November the 9th, 2020, but was not formally served until Wednesday, January 26th, 2021. I have had difficulties... 2020.
I was going to say...
There's a misprint in that article.
Yeah, the timeline seems a bit...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it says SIC 2021.
Yes. I've had difficulty securing a legal team, was hoping you might be able to put me in contact with any fundraising organizations and or attorneys that are involved in this process. And this was an email to the former Trump official. My aunt and uncle applied to refinance their home to loosen up some money since I don't have any much immediate family, but they weren't approved. So she was in dire financial straits, and so she may have felt motivated to revenge herself upon the Trump team. She also called the hearings BS and said a bunch of other derogatory remarks about the legitimacy of the process, but then suddenly becomes their star witness overnight, and Liz Cheney is weeping at the credibility of her testimony, even though it has more holes in it than Swiss cheese. So it seems that the January 6th committee is pretty much a farce. They don't have all that much information, but at least we have a very strong leader out on the campaign trail around the world, showing the world that American integrity is back in action. Let's take it away to Joe Biden.
I will once more return to the hollow ground of Yad Vashem to honor 6 million Jewish lives were stolen in the genocide and continue, which we must do every day, continue to bear witness. to keep alive the truth and honor of the Holocaust, horror of the Holocaust, honor those we lost.
American exceptionalism indeed.
Yes, just for clarity, we do not share Joe Biden's statements that the Holocaust had any honor. But Joe Biden seems to have walked back this position preeminently months ago because he decided to insult the Nick Fuentes Catboy constituency of American electorate. Let's play this.
Nazi sympathizers, carrying Nazi flags, using the...
So thank God the USA has protected itself from sober, skateboarding, beanie hat wearing political commentator, and the entire fate of the American Republic is in very safe, liver-spotted hands.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the Contemplation series, this one on globalism. And if you want to follow what else Josh is putting out, you can follow him on Getter at Josh_firm on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.